Dr. Webb snatched the syringe off the tray, grabbed the dog's scruff with his bare hand, and pressed the needle against the animal's neck. "Hold it down!" he barked. 3 orderlies threw their weight across the gurney. The dog screamed, not growled, screamed, a sound so raw it cracked something open in the chest of every person in that room. Blood soaked through the canvas restraint onto Webb's sleeve, and he didn't even flinch. If it fights the needle, double the dose. That was the moment Eva stepped forward. Because that dog wasn't fighting the needle. He was fighting to stay alive long enough for someone to speak his language. And if you had been watching closely, if you had been paying attention, you would have seen the exact moment something shifted behind her eyes. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and follow this story all the way to the end. And drop a comment below. Tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The night had already gone sideways before Eva Reyes ever set foot in Trauma Bay 4. She had been on shift for exactly 47 minutes when the call came through the overhead speaker. Not a code, not a standard alert, but something that made the charge nurse at the front desk stand up from her chair and press her hand flat against her chest like she was trying to hold something in. The words that came through the speaker were clipped and fast and military in their delivery. Incoming K9 unit, handler KIA, animal critical, ETA 4 minutes. KIA, killed in action. Eva had been standing at the medication dispensary, double-checking a chart for a patient in room 6, when she heard it. She didn't drop the chart. She didn't gasp. She just went very still for a moment. The kind of still that people who have heard those words before go. And then she set the chart down quietly and walked toward Trauma Bay 4 without being asked. Nobody told her to go. Nobody assigned her. She just went. The bay was already filling up when she arrived. Dr. Marcus Webb was there, the senior attending on duty. A tall man with silver at his temples and a reputation for being efficient to the point of coldness. He was good at his job. Everyone knew it. But good at his job meant he made decisions fast, and he didn't second-guess them, and he did not, under any circumstances, waste time on variables he considered unmanageable. He was already pulling on gloves when the double doors burst open and the stretcher came through. Eva saw the dog before she fully processed anything else. He was a Belgian Malinois. She knew the breed immediately, the lean and muscled body, the tan and black coat, the ears that were built to catch every sound in a room. He was strapped to a military-issued transport stretcher with a canvas restraint across his chest. But the restraint was doing almost nothing. His front legs were working, paws scrambling against the surface, and the sounds coming out of him were not the sounds of an animal in pain. Or rather, they were not only that. There was something else underneath the pain. Something older and rawer and harder to name. Grief sounds different in every living thing that feels it. Eva had learned that a long time ago. The 2 personnel who had brought the dog in, both in tactical gear, faces tight, one of them with dried blood on his forearm that wasn't his, released the stretcher handles and stepped back. One of them, a young man who couldn't have been more than 24, looked at Dr. Webb and said, "He won't let anyone touch him. We tried in transport. He almost took Torres's hand off at the wrist." Dr. Webb looked at the dog. The dog looked at Dr. Webb. The growl that came out of the animal was low and continuous and absolutely certain of itself. "What's his status?" Webb asked, not to the dog, not to his emotions, just to the facts. "Shrapnel laceration, left flank, deep. We packed it in the field, but the packing soaked through. He's lost blood. We don't know how much. His right front leg took impact. We're not sure if it's fracture or soft tissue. He needs imaging, and he needs it now." "Right." Webb turned to the room. "Get me the sedative protocol for working dogs. Get Dr. Fallon from Veterinary Emergency on the phone. And somebody call security up here because I am not getting my team mauled because the animal is..." The dog lunged. Not far. The restraint held, barely, but the sound that came with it cleared the space around the gurney instantly. Two nurses stepped back. A tech dropped a tray. The metallic clatter of instruments on the floor was almost absurd in the middle of everything else. And for a half second, the only sounds in the room were the tray settling and the dog breathing in sharp, furious pulls. "That," said Webb very calmly, "is why we sedate." "He's not attacking." The voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Eva was standing near the door, still holding her clipboard, and she hadn't raised her voice. She'd said it the way you say something when you believe it so completely that you don't feel the need to perform it. Webb looked at her the way he looked at a lot of things he hadn't asked for. "Excuse me?" "He's not attacking," Eva said again. She took one step forward, not toward Webb, toward the dog. He lunged at the space, not at anyone. He's placing himself between the room and something. He's guarding. He's a traumatized animal in a strange environment with a wound that needs immediate. He's grieving. She said it simply. His handler is gone. He knows it. He was there. And right now, everything in this room is a threat because nothing in this room is familiar. And no one in this room is the person he was supposed to protect. There was a silence, not a comfortable one. Charge nurse Diane Cho, who had been in that trauma center for 18 years and had seen enough to fill 3 lifetimes, was standing near the supply cabinet. And she looked at Eva the way you look at someone who has just said something either very brave or very foolish, and you're not yet sure which. "Honey," she said, keeping her voice low, "I appreciate the instinct, but that animal is going to bleed out while we're having a philosophical conversation about his emotional state." "Then let me try something," Eva said. "Give me 2 minutes." "You're a nurse," Webb said, "on your first shift." "Yes. And your plan is to, what exactly?" "Talk to him." The room was quiet again. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped 3 times. The dog was watching Eva now. He had stopped scrambling against the restraint. He was still growling, that low, continuous sound, but his eyes had shifted, and any person who had ever worked with working dogs long enough would have recognized the difference. His eyes had stopped scanning the room and fixed on her. He was assessing. He was listening. Webb shook his head. "Get me the sedative protocol." "Dr. Webb," that was Diane. Her voice had changed, just slightly. "Give her the 2 minutes." He turned to look at the charge nurse. She held his gaze without blinking, and something passed between them that was 20 years of working in the same hospital and knowing when to push back. "2 minutes," he said, "and then we do this my way." Eva handed her clipboard to the tech nearest to her without looking away from the dog. She moved toward the gurney slowly. Not tiptoeing, that would have been wrong. Animals read hesitation as deception. She moved with intention, with weight, with the kind of calm that comes not from pretending there is nothing to be afraid of, but from deciding it doesn't matter right now. The growl intensified as she got closer. 6 feet, 5, 4. One of the security officers who had arrived, a heavy-set man named Garland, who had worked the hospital for 11 years and had broken up more altercations than he could count, put one hand on the pepper spray at his belt, not reaching for it, just reminding himself it was there. Eva stopped at 3 feet. The dog was staring at her with an attention so complete and so focused that it almost felt like pressure, like a physical weight against her chest. His ears were forward. His body was rigid. The wound in his flank was bleeding through the field packing in a slow, dark seep that nobody in the room could ignore. She did not reach out. She did not try to touch him. She lowered herself, slowly, smoothly, until she was crouching at the level of the gurney. And she looked at the dog the way you look at someone you have known for a very long time in a place that was very hard. And then she started to talk. What she said, nobody in the room could understand. Not the words. It wasn't gibberish. It had shape and rhythm and meaning, clearly because the dog understood it. But it wasn't English, and it wasn't Spanish, And it wasn't any language that Diane Cho, who spoke for, could identify. It was low, and it was even, and it had something in it that made two nurses near the back of the room go slightly still. The way you go still when you hear something that bypasses your brain entirely and lands somewhere older. The dog's growl faltered. It didn't stop, but it faltered, broke for just a moment, and that moment was a crack in a wall, and everyone in the room felt it. Webb had been checking his watch. He stopped. Garland's hand came off his belt. Eva kept talking. She shifted her weight slightly, bringing one knee to the floor, and the dog's ears, those perfect, alert ears, moved, adjusted, pointed toward her. His head had dropped, almost imperceptibly, but dropped. The locked muscles in his shoulders were changing. Not releasing, but changing. "What is she saying?" The young tech, his name was Brandon, he'd been on the floor for 6 months, whispered to Diane. Diane shook her head slowly. "I have no idea." Eva reached out her hand, not toward the dog's face, not toward his wound, toward his chest, low and slow, palm up. The gesture of someone who was not asking for submission, someone who was offering something. The dog snapped. The sound was explosive, a crack of teeth in the air, and half the room flinched back, and Eva did not move, not a muscle. Her hand stayed exactly where it was, palm up, 3 inches from where the dog's jaws had just closed on nothing, and she kept talking in that low, measured voice that nobody could translate. Webb said, "That's it, we're done. Sedate. Wait." Diane's voice, flat, certain. The dog was looking at Eva's hand. He had stopped growling. The room was so quiet that the ventilation system suddenly felt very loud. The dog's breathing was audible, rapid, shallow, still stressed, but the aggression had drained out of the sound of it. What was left was something more naked than aggression. Something that sounded, if you were being honest, like a sound you might make if the worst thing you had ever experienced had just happened, and you were still in the middle of it, and no one around you spoke your language. Eva moved her hand forward by 2 inches. The dog lowered his head and pressed his nose against her palm. Nobody breathed. Then Eva reached up with her other hand, very gently, and pulled back the dog's left ear, just far enough to look at the inside of the ear flap. And for a moment, her face changed. It was a small change, a tightening around the eyes, a shift of something that moved through her expression like light moving across a room when a cloud passes. And then it was gone, and her face was calm again. But Diane had been watching, and Diane had seen it. "Okay," Eva said quietly. She wasn't talking to the dog anymore. She was talking to the room. "I need you to get me a pair of gloves, a fresh trauma kit, a saline flush, and I need everyone to step back about 4 feet, not out of the room, just back." "You are not authorized to," Webb started. "Dr. Webb." Eva looked up at him for the first time since she'd crouched down. "He will let me treat him. He won't let you. And he's running out of time, so you can override me in about 4 minutes after he's stable, and I will accept every consequence of that. But right now, I'm asking you to step back." The silence was different this time. It had a weight to it. Webb stared at her. Then he looked at the dog. The dog, who was lying with his head against Eva's palm, and his eyes half closed, and the fight gone out of his body, like something that had been let down gently. Webb stepped back. He said nothing. He just stepped back. And then one by one, the rest of the room followed. Diane moved to the supply cart without being asked and pulled a fresh trauma kit. Brandon held out a pair of gloves. Eva took them, snapped them on, and turned back to the dog. And the dog turned his head toward her. And the sound he made was not a growl. It was something much smaller and much more devastating than a growl. Eva pressed her forehead against the dog's for just a moment, just one moment, and the room, every person in it, went somewhere private and quiet in their own heads, the way you do when you accidentally witness something that was not meant for you. Then she got to work. Her hands were steady. They were always steady when it mattered. That was the thing about Eva Reyes that nobody in this hospital knew yet, because she was 47 minutes into her first shift. But her hands knew how to do things in conditions that most hands couldn't manage. The field packing came away cleanly. The wound was bad, deep, with debris still in the channel. The kind of wound that required patience and precision and a tolerance for the sounds a living creature makes when it's in pain. But the dog did not fight her. He trembled. He made those small, broken sounds, but he held still. "Saline," she said, and Diane handed it to her. The flush was careful and thorough. Eva worked with a focus that had no performance in it, no demonstration, no awareness of being watched. She was just doing the work, the way someone does work they have done before in places they don't talk about. Brandon was the one who finally said it out loud, in a whisper that was slightly too loud for a room that quiet. "How does she know how to do this?" Diane looked at him. Then she looked at Eva. Then she looked at the inside of that ear flap, which Eva had carefully folded back to look at earlier, and which was now just barely visible from where Diane was standing. There was a marking there, small, precise, tattooed into the skin. Diane had worked long enough to know a military identifier when she saw one, and next to the identifier was something else, a short sequence of symbols that she did not recognize, that nobody in the room would have recognized, nobody except Eva. The dog's breathing was slowing into something more sustainable. His eyes had closed. Eva was closing the laceration with a focus and a steadiness that made Webb, who had gone silent in the corner, tighten his jaw and look away, and then look back. "She served," Diane said quietly, "to no one in particular, to herself really. Nobody confirmed it, nobody denied it. The monitors that Brandon had managed to attach during the brief window when the dog was calm were starting to tell a story that was less catastrophic than it had been 10 minutes ago. Heart rate still elevated, but trending. Blood pressure low, but holding. The leg, Eva had assessed it with practiced hands, firm and gentle and knowledgeable, was not fractured, soft tissue. It would heal. She reached the last of the closure work and paused, and her hand, just for a fraction of a second, rested flat against the dog's side. Over his heart. She felt the beat of it, and something moved across her face again. That same private, internal thing that Diane had caught earlier. And this time it didn't leave as quickly. This time it stayed for a moment. And in that moment, Eva Reyes was not 47 minutes into her first shift at Bayside Regional Trauma Center. She was somewhere else entirely. She was somewhere cold and loud and dark, and there was a dog pressing his weight against her leg, and there was a man crouched 10 feet away with his hand up, meaning wait, meaning hold, meaning I need one more second and then we move. That man was gone now. He had been gone for hours, and the dog on the gurney was the only thing left that knew his name the way Eva knew his name. Not as a rank, not as a record, but as a person who had sat in the dark with them both and trusted them and been trusted back. She exhaled, long and slow and controlled. "His pressure's stabilizing," Brandon said, almost startled by his own voice. "I know," Eva said. She stood up. Her knees ached slightly from the floor. She was 31 years old, and her knees had opinions about cold floors now, which was a thing she found quietly funny in the back of her mind, even now. She stripped off her gloves and turned to face the room. Webb was staring at her with an expression she couldn't fully read. Diane was standing very still. Garland, near the door, had crossed his arms and was looking at the ceiling with the particular expression of a large man trying not to show that he was moved. "He'll need to stay still," Eva said professionally. "The leg will bear weight in a few days if there's no complications. The flank wound will need to be checked every 8 hours. The debris field was deeper than the packing suggested, and I want to make sure we got everything. He should have someone with him, ideally someone he knows. But if that's not possible..." The double doors of the trauma bay opened. The man who came through them was not a doctor and was not hospital staff, and the room knew it immediately. Knew it in the way you know it when someone enters a space and the gravity of the room shifts slightly toward them. He was in his 50s, in civilian clothes, but the way he held himself had never been civilian and never would be. He had close-cropped gray hair and a face that had made a long peace with being unreadable. And his eyes went to the dog first, then to Eva, and then he stopped moving. "Who authorized this?" he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that comes from training, not temperament. Webb started to speak. The man held up one hand, not dismissively, just with the authority of someone who was used to being the person in the room whose answer mattered, and his eyes stayed on Eva. "Who are you?" he said. Eva met his gaze. Her jaw was set. Her hands were at her sides. "My name is Eva Reyes," she said. "I'm a nurse." The man looked at the dog. The dog, still sedated with his own exhaustion, still and breathing and alive, had one paw extended toward the edge of the gurney, pointed in Eva's direction, the way sleeping dogs point toward the last person they trusted before they close their eyes. The man looked back at Eva. "No," he said, "you're not." "No," he said, "you're not." The words landed in the room like something dropped from a height. Not loud, not theatrical, just final. The way certain truths are final when the person saying them has earned the right to say them. Eva didn't move. She held the man's gaze with a steadiness that Dr. Webb, who was standing 3 feet to her left and had spent 20 years assessing people under pressure, found himself cataloging involuntarily. No flinch, no over-explanation, no reaching for a credential or a title to hide behind. She just stood there, and she looked at him, and she waited. The man took 2 steps into the room. His eyes moved to the dog, a long look, thorough and practiced, the look of someone doing a damage assessment and doing it fast, and then back to Eva. "The unit code," he said. "Where did you learn it?" "I didn't learn it," Eva said. "I was given it." The man's jaw shifted. A small movement, almost nothing, but Diane Cho, who had been standing at the supply cart and had been very deliberately not breathing too loudly for the last 90 seconds, caught it. That small movement meant something. She didn't know what, but it meant something. "Given it by who?" the man said. Eva was quiet for a beat. One beat. The kind of pause that isn't hesitation. That's calculation. That's a person deciding exactly how much to open a door they've kept closed for a long time. "Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke," she said. The room went somewhere very still. The man with the gray hair stood without moving for 3 full seconds. Then he turned to Dr. Webb. "I need this room cleared," he said, not asking. Webb crossed his arms. "This is my trauma bay, and that animal is still my patient, and I'm not—" "Dr. Webb." The man's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "My name is Commander Richard Hale, Naval Special Warfare Command. The dog on that gurney is government property designated under a classified operational unit, and I have the legal authority to clear this room. I'm asking you to do it voluntarily because it's faster and more respectful than the alternative." Webb stared at him. Then he looked at Eva. Then he looked at the dog. He uncrossed his arms, said nothing, and walked out. The sound of his shoes on the floor was the loudest thing in the room for a moment. Brandon followed without being told. The 2 orderlies who had been hovering near the door were already gone. Garland looked at Diane. Diane looked at Garland. Then Diane set down the supply kit, picked up the monitoring chart, and walked to the door. She paused there, hand on the frame, and looked back at Eva. "I'm right outside," she said. It wasn't medical information. It was something else. "I know," Eva said. Then Diane left, and it was just Eva and Commander Hale and the dog, breathing in the slow, stabilizing rhythm of an animal that had just barely decided to stay. Hale moved to the gurney. He looked at the dog, at the closed wound, the fresh packing, the monitors, and whatever he was calculating, he calculated it privately. Then he turned back to Eva. "Rourke is dead," he said. "I know." Her voice didn't crack, but it changed. The way a road changes when it crosses into different terrain. The team that brought the dog in, they told the intake staff, I heard it. He was KIA 6 hours ago in a forward operating position that I cannot name in this room. Hale paused. He specifically requested you as the unit medic 18 months ago. I denied the request. Eva's eyes sharpened. You denied it. You had left the program. You had civilian credentials by then. The request was irregular. His exact words, Eva said, and her voice had an edge to it now, the first edge he'd heard, were that I was the only person he trusted to bring his dog home if it came to that. Those were his exact words. He told me that himself. I know what his words were, Hale said. I read the report. Then you know that you denied a dying man's request. The silence after that was not comfortable. It was the kind of silence that has weight and heat and history in it. Hale did not look away from her. I made an operational decision based on protocol. And he's dead, Eva said, and his dog almost died on a gurney because no one in this building could get close enough to treat him. And I was 40 feet away the entire time. She stopped, breathed, reset. I'm not saying that to win an argument. I'm saying it because it's true and you need to hear it. Hale looked at the dog again. The dog's ear twitched in sleep, just once, the small automatic reflex of an animal that even unconscious is still listening. How long did you know Rourke? Hale asked. 3 years, Eva said. I came into the unit as a field medic attached to the K9 program. Danny was already there. The dog, Axel, was assigned to him 8 months into my rotation. She glanced at the dog. He was a nightmare when he came in. Wouldn't work with anyone. Bit 2 handlers in the first week. They were 2 days from washing him out of the program. I remember the report. Danny asked me to try. I spent 6 days with Axel before he let me touch him. She paused. Sound familiar? Hale's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. The code, he said. Rourke taught it to you. We developed it together, Eva said, after Axel bonded with both of us. It's not a language, it's more like a frequency, a set of sounds and rhythms that Axel associates with safety. With his people. She stopped. I was one of his people. Hale was quiet for a moment, then, why did you leave? And there it was, the question that had a long answer and a short answer, and Eva chose the short one right now, because the long one wasn't his to have yet. Personal reasons, she said. Hale studied her. Personal reasons don't cover an honorable discharge with the record you had. No, Eva agreed. They don't. But there's... Eva folded her hands in front of her, the gesture of someone who is managing something internally. Was it fast? Hale looked at her. He understood what she was asking. Yes, he said. It was fast. Eva nodded once. She looked at the floor for exactly 2 seconds. Then she looked back up, and the managing was done, and she was back. He needs fluids through the night, she said. The flank wound needs reassessment at the 6-hour mark. His blood pressure is still low, normal. I'd like to see it higher before I'm comfortable. And someone needs to be in this room who he trusts. He cannot wake up alone. Agreed, Hale said. I'll have 2 of his team stationed here. Not 2. 1. Too many people will make him anxious. 1 person, someone Axel knows well, someone who was on the last deployment. That's the right call. Hale looked at her steadily. You're telling me how to manage my unit's assets. I'm telling you how to keep your unit's dog alive, Eva said. You can take it or leave it, but you came into my trauma bay. Something shifted in Hale's face. It might have been the beginning of a different kind of assessment. It lasted only a moment, and then his expression was neutral again. But it had been there. There's something you need to know, he said. Eva waited. Rourke's last transmission before the position was overrun. Hale reached into his jacket and produced a folded piece of paper. Standard white paper, printed text. the kind of document that had gone through a secure channel and been decoded at the other end. He held it out. Eva took it. She unfolded it. She read it. The room was very quiet. When she looked up, her face had changed in a way that she wasn't fully controlling anymore. "He named me," she said. It wasn't a question. "He named you as Axel's emergency handler in his final field communication. He filed it through the proper channel 20 minutes before his position was overrun. It's legally binding within the parameters of the program." "He knew," Eva said quietly. "He knew what was going to happen." "We don't know that." "He knew," she said again. And this time there was no room for argument in her voice, because she had known Danny Rourke for 3 years, and she knew how he thought, and she knew that a man who files formal paperwork 20 minutes before an enemy overrun is not doing it because he's optimistic about the outcome. He filed it because he knew Axel would survive, and he knew Axel would need me. Hale didn't respond to that directly. "The document means that as of right now, you have provisional authority over Axel's care and handling pending a formal review." "Provisional," Eva said. "I have to take it to the chain of command. The review could take, how long? 48 to 72 hours. And in the meantime?" "In the meantime," Hale said, "you are the most qualified person in this building to manage that animal's recovery, which is why I am asking you, formally, to continue." Eva looked at him. Something about the word asking clearly registered. The fact that he had used it, the fact that Commander Richard Hale of Naval Special Warfare Command was standing in a trauma bay and asking a nurse named Eva Reyes for something instead of ordering it. She noticed it. He knew she noticed it. "All right," she said. "I'll stay with him tonight." Hale nodded. He folded the paper back into his jacket. Then he moved to leave, and his hand was on the door when Eva spoke again. "Commander," her voice stopped him. He turned. "The 2 men who brought Axel in," she said, "the one with the blood on his sleeve. He was with Danny when it happened." Hale's expression was careful. "What makes you say that?" "Because he didn't make eye contact with anyone when he came in. Not the staff, not me, not even Axel. The only person who won't look at the dog is the person who was there and couldn't do anything." She paused. "He needs to talk to someone. Not a debrief, someone." Hale held her gaze for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll see to it." And he left. The door swung shut behind him. Eva turned back to Axel. She pulled a chair from the corner of the room to the side of the gurney and sat down. And she reached out and put her hand flat on the dog's side, over his ribs, and she felt his breathing, steadier now, more even. And she sat with that for a while. It was 11:40 at night. She had been on shift for 1 hour and 53 minutes. Diane came back in 6 minutes later. She didn't ask permission. She came in with 2 cups of coffee and set one on the counter near Eva and sat on the other chair without being invited. And the 2 women sat in the quiet room with the dog between them for a moment before Diane said anything. "You want to tell me who you are?" Diane said, not unkindly. "I told you," Eva said. "I'm a nurse. You also apparently speak secret military dog language and know a Navy SEAL commander on a first-name basis and have hands that don't shake when a military working dog is snapping at them." Diane took a sip of her coffee. "So I'm going to ask again, who are you?" Eva almost smiled. It was the closest thing to a smile she'd managed in the last 2 hours. "Field medic, K-9 program, Naval Special Warfare, 4 years. And you left." "And I left." "Why?" Eva looked at Axel. His ear twitched again. "Because I lost someone," she said, "and I thought leaving would help." "Did it?" A beat. "No." Diane nodded slowly, like that answer confirmed something she'd suspected. "The man that died tonight, Rourke, he was my partner," Eva said. "My team leader. She stopped. "He was my person. The way you have a person. The one who knows where all the edges of you are." She stopped again. We weren't together. That's not what I mean. But he mattered. He mattered in the way that very few people matter. Diane said nothing. She let the silence do what silence does when it's given room. He filed paperwork tonight, Eva said. Before the end, he made sure Axel would get to me. She looked at the dog, and her voice when she spoke again was very quiet and very even and very much the voice of a person holding a very large thing very carefully. He thought of his dog. Right at the end, he thought of his dog. Diane put her hand on Eva's arm, not speaking, just there. The monitor beeped softly. Axel's heart rate, steady, 72, coming down. Eva picked up her coffee. She drank. She set it back down. I haven't been back in a room like this in 14 months, she said. I thought nursing would be enough. I thought if I stayed out of the field and kept my hands busy and helped people who weren't in combat zones, that would be. She shook her head slightly. It's not enough. I don't know what that says about me. It says you're someone who was built for something specific, Diane said. And you can try to be something else, but built is built. Eva looked at her. When did you figure that out? About 15 years ago, Diane said. I tried to quit emergency medicine and go into clinic work. Nice hours, weekends off, blood pressure through the floor. She paused. I lasted 4 months, came back and never left. Something settled between them. The kind of thing that settles between people who have arrived at the same truth from very different directions. Then the door opened again. Eva straightened. Diane stood. The man who came in this time was not Commander Hale. He was younger, late 20s, still in tactical gear, face that hadn't slept in approximately 36 hours and showed every hour of it. He was one of the two who had brought Axel in, the one with the blood on his sleeve, which was now dried to a dark brown rust against the fabric. He stopped when he saw Eva. He looked at Axel. His jaw worked. They said I could come in, he said. His voice was rough. The commander said, he said it was okay. It's okay, Eva confirmed. Come in. The young man came in. He stopped at the foot of the gurney and looked at the dog for a long time. His hands were at his sides, and they were very still, and his face was doing the thing that faces do when a person is working very hard to hold a shape they're not sure they can hold. Is he going to make it? He asked. Yes, Eva said. He's going to make it. The man nodded. Once, twice, like he was trying to affix that fact somewhere permanent. Then he looked up at Eva and said, he wouldn't let us touch him. In transport, we tried for 20 minutes. He kept. He stopped, swallowed. I thought we were going to lose him too. I know, Eva said. How did you? He looked at her hands, then at Axel, then back at her. How did you do that? What were you saying to him? Eva was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I was telling him that Danny sent me, that Danny asked me to look after him, that he wasn't alone. The young man's face did something it had been trying not to do since he walked in. He turned away, toward the wall, and put one hand on the back of his neck, and stood there for a moment being 27 years old and exhausted and wrecked. He talked about you, the man said, still facing the wall. Rourke. He talked about you more than once. He said if anything ever happened, Axel would need to hear a specific voice. He never told us the code, but he said there was a voice. He turned back around. His eyes were red but dry. I didn't know what he meant until tonight. Eva looked at him for a moment. What's your name? Torres, he said. Marco Torres. Sit down, Marco, Eva said. She gestured to the chair Diane had vacated. You've been standing since the field. Sit down. Torres looked at the chair, looked at Axel. Then he sat down. And the three of them, Eva, Torres, and Diane, who had returned quietly to the doorway, settled into the room around the sleeping dog, in the particular silence of people who have each lost something and who are too tired to pretend otherwise. The monitors beeped. The ventilation hummed. Somewhere outside the bay, the trauma center continued its endless business. Voices in hallways, gurneys rolling, the hospital doing what hospitals do at midnight. And then Axel moved. Not much, just a shift, a repositioning, the natural drift of a dog in deep sleep finding a better angle. But in shifting, he moved his head, and his nose found Eva's hand where it rested at the edge of the gurney, and he pushed against it. The way dogs push against the hands of the people they know. Automatic, uncalculated. Torres made a sound, small and involuntary and human. Eva looked at Axel's face, his closed eyes, the twitch of his muzzle, the slow expansion of his chest. And she thought about a man who had been alive 6 hours ago and who had, in the last 20 minutes of his life, filed the right paperwork to make sure his dog got home. Outside the room, down the hall, near the trauma bay intake desk, a phone rang. Diane picked her head up. The phone rang again. Then one of the night nurses pushed open the bay door and said, in a voice that was carefully controlled but not controlled enough, "Eva, there's a call. They're asking for you specifically. They said to tell you it's about the unit, and it's not Hale." Eva looked at Torres. Torres looked at Eva. Whatever had passed for stillness in that room was gone. She stood up. Her hand left the edge of the gurney. Axel's nose tracked the movement in sleep. "Who is it?" Eva said. The night nurse shook her head. "He wouldn't give a name. He said you'd know who it was if he said to tell you, Delta 7, standing by." The blood left Eva's face. Not visibly, not the way it does in movies. But Torres, who had been trained to read people in conditions where reading people was the difference between alive and not, saw it. He saw the thing that moved through her expression at those 4 words, and he sat up straighter without knowing why. Eva stood very still. "Delta 7, she said quietly, as if to herself, as if confirming something. "Eva," Torres said slowly, "what is Delta 7? She looked at him, and for the first time all night, Eva Reyes looked like someone who did not have the answer. Like someone who had just had the ground shift underneath a certainty she had built her last 14 months on. "It's a dead signal," she said. "It's the signal you transmit when you are the last one standing and you have confirmed that all other members of your unit are—" She stopped. Torres was on his feet. "Delta 7 is the signal for, 'I am the only one left,'" Eva said. "Danny would have transmitted it when the position was overrun." She looked at the door, at the nurse, at the phone down the hall. "But Danny is dead." Nobody breathed. "Then who," Torres said, "is transmitting it?" Eva was already moving before Torres finished the question. She crossed the trauma bay in 4 steps, pushed through the door, and was in the hallway with the night nurse keeping pace beside her. Torres was right behind them, his boots loud on the linoleum, and Diane was at the rear with her arms crossed and her face doing the particular math of a woman who has decided that whatever is happening, she is going to be in the room for it. The phone at the intake desk was a standard hospital landline, black receiver, blinking hold light. Nothing about it looked like anything other than what it was. But Eva stopped 2 feet from it and stood there for a moment, the way you stop before opening a door that might have anything on the other side. Torres put his hand on the back of the desk chair. "Eva." She picked up the phone. "This is Eva Reyes," she said. 3 seconds of silence. Then a voice, male, low, with interference underneath it, the static of distance, or a compromised line, or both. "You're alive," the voice said, and the way it said it was not a greeting, it was a confirmation. The kind of confirmation you make when you've been operating on the assumption that something is true and you suddenly have proof. Eva's hand tightened on the receiver. "Who is this?" "Echo 4, the voice said. "You know the identifier." She knew the identifier. Echo 4 was a secondary field designation, a shadow call sign assigned to personnel embedded in units during classified operations. The kind of person whose name did not appear on standard rosters. The kind of person who officially didn't exist inside a given operational structure, but who was in the field anyway, doing work that required deniability. Echo 4 is a dead designation, Eva said carefully. That unit was dissolved 14 months ago. Dissolved on paper, the voice said. You know how paper works. Torres was watching her face. He had positioned himself close enough to hear fragments of the call without pressing in. And what he was hearing was making the muscles in his forearms tighten. What do you want? Eva said. I want you to listen very carefully, the voice said, and I want you to not react in a way that makes the people around you ask questions you're not ready to answer. A pause. Rourke is dead. That's confirmed. I confirmed it myself. I know, Eva said. What you don't know, the voice said, is that he wasn't the primary target. The hallway was quiet. The overnight hum of the hospital, distantly beeping, distantly murmuring, continued its indifferent rhythm, and Eva stood at the intake desk with a phone against her ear and something moving through her expression that Torres clocked as controlled fear. Not panic, not shock, the specific, trained response of a person receiving information that restructures everything they thought they understood about a situation. Say that again, Eva said. The position was targeted, not ambushed, targeted. Someone with operational knowledge of Rourke's location transmitted coordinates that should have been impossible to access outside the unit. The voice paused. Someone inside the network sold the position. Diane made a small sound. She pressed her fist against her mouth. Torres went completely still. How do you know this? Eva said. Because I was embedded with the forward team, and I pulled the communication logs before the position was destroyed. There was an outgoing transmission 40 minutes before the overrun. Not Rourke, not anyone on the ground team. Someone accessed the position data remotely and transmitted it on an encrypted channel. Another pause. I have the logs. I'm trying to get them out. Where are you? I can't tell you that. Then why are you calling me? Because, the voice said, Rourke told me to. He told me, before the end, when he still had comms, he told me that if he didn't make it out, I should call you. He said you were the only person outside the unit he trusted completely. He said you'd know what to do with the information. Eva closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then she opened them. Did Hale know you were embedded? Silence on the line. The kind of silence that is its own answer. He doesn't know you're calling me, Eva said. No, the voice said, and it needs to stay that way until I know where the leak is. It could be anywhere, Eva. It could be close. Torres took a step forward. Eva held up one hand, not dismissively, just clearly, and he stopped. What do you need from me? She said. 24 hours, the voice said. I need you to keep Axel secure and keep Hale at a distance until I can verify the source of the leak. The dog was a witness. I know that sounds... It doesn't sound crazy, Eva said. Dogs are trained to track. Axel was there. He has scent memory of everyone at that position. She straightened. If someone wanted to make sure there were no witnesses, then the dog being alive and in your custody is a problem for whoever sold that position, the voice said. Yes. The fluorescent light above the intake desk buzzed once. A small, absurd sound in the middle of everything. I'll call this number in 12 hours, the voice said. Don't go anywhere, Eva. A beat. And don't trust the room. The line went dead. Eva held the receiver for a moment after the click. Then she set it down, very carefully, and turned around. Torres was staring at her. Diane was staring at her. The night nurse, whose name was Priya, and who had worked this hospital for 3 years, and had signed up for exactly none of what this night had delivered, was staring at her from a position slightly behind Diane's left shoulder. Tell me, Torres said. His voice was flat and immediate and not asking. Eva looked at him. She made a decision in approximately 4 seconds. She could see it happening, the rapid internal calculation behind her eyes. And then she said, not here. Eva, not here, she said again, Back in the bay, close the door. She walked back to Trauma Bay 4, and Torres followed, and Diane followed, and Priya, after a moment of looking at the empty hallway in both directions, followed too because apparently this was who she was now. The door swung shut. The monitors beeped. Axel breathed. Eva stood at the foot of the gurney and looked at Torres and said, "Rourke's position wasn't overrun. It was given up." Torres's face did something complex and terrible. What? Someone transmitted coordinates. Before the attack, someone with inside access to Rourke's operational data sold the position. She watched him process it. "I know how that lands. Take a second." He didn't take a second. "Who?" "I don't know. The person on that phone doesn't know yet either. They're working on it." She paused. "Torres, think. In the last week, in the lead up to the deployment, was there anything irregular? Anyone asking questions they shouldn't have been asking? Any access to comms that seemed off?" Torres ran his hand over his face. He was thinking, and thinking fast, and she could see him pulling at threads. "There was a briefing update," he said slowly. 3 days before. The position coordinates were distributed on a revised roster. Standard procedure. But the distribution list..." He stopped. "What about it?" "It was wider than usual," he said. "Rourke flagged it. He asked why the list had been expanded. He was told it was a coordination update. He didn't push it." Torres looked at Eva. "He didn't push it, and then 3 days later..." "He filed the Delta 7 transmission," Eva said quietly. Torres pressed both hands flat on the counter. He stood there like that for a moment, breathing through it. "The man on the phone," Diane said. Her voice was carefully measured, the way it gets when a person is carrying professional instinct and human alarm at the same time. "He said not to trust the room." "Yes," Eva said. "That means he doesn't know who the leak is. It could be anyone with access to the operational network." "Yes." "Could it be Hale?" Diane said. The question sat in the room like something radioactive. Nobody touched it immediately. Then Torres said, "No," flat and certain. "Not Hale. I've known him for 6 years. No." "You've known him 6 years," Eva said, not arguing, noting. "Not Hale," Torres said again, and this time it had something harder in it. The loyalty of a soldier, which is a specific and total thing. Eva didn't push it. "Okay, not Hale. But until we know for certain, we manage the information." She looked at each person in the room in turn. Diane, Torres, Priya. What was said in this room stays in this room. That includes Hale for now. "I'm not saying he's involved. I'm saying that until I know where the leak is, I'm not introducing variables." Priya raised her hand slightly, like a student. "I'm sorry. I'm a night shift nurse who came in to tell you about a phone call, and now I'm apparently part of a classified military situation." "You don't have to be," Eva said. "You can walk out right now, and I will not think less of you." Priya looked at Axel. She looked at Eva. She put her hand down. "No," she said. "I'll stay." Eva nodded. "Thank you." Torres had been quiet for a moment, and now he spoke. "Axel was at the position. The whole time. He was with Danny from insertion to..." He stopped. "He has scent memory. If whoever transmitted those coordinates was physically present at any point in the operational chain, Axel can identify them." "That's what the caller meant," Eva said. "Axel being alive is a liability to whoever sold the position. A working military dog with intact scent memory, bonded to a handler who was specifically targeted." "He's evidence," Torres said. "He's evidence," Eva confirmed. The word landed with a particular weight. Axel's ear twitched in sleep. His breathing continued its steady rhythm, indifferent to the significance of his own existence in this moment. Diane moved to the monitor and checked the readings without being asked. The reflex of a woman who had been doing her actual job while everything else was happening. "His pressure is up to 89/58. Better. Heart rate 68. He's stabilizing well." She looked at Eva. He needs at least 6 hours of uninterrupted rest. The wound needs to stay clean, and the next reassessment shouldn't be before. The door opened. Commander Hale came in. The room reconfigured itself in the half-second before he fully entered. Torres straightened. Priya stepped back. Diane turned to the monitor with professional focus. And only Eva stayed exactly as she was, standing at the foot of the gurney, hands at her sides, face neutral. Hale looked at the room. He was a man who could read a room the way other people read text, quickly and with retention. He looked at Eva last. "I have an update," he said. "The preliminary field report came through." He looked at Torres. "You should hear this too." Torres nodded. The position was overrun by a coordinated force with specific knowledge of the team's location and timing, Hale said. He said it the way he said everything: controlled, direct, without decoration. Intel is characterizing it as a targeted operation. Eva said nothing. She watched Hale's face. "There's an internal review being initiated," Hale continued. "As of 0100, the unit's operational records are under a security hold. All personnel associated with the last deployment are restricted from discussing details until the review is complete." He paused. "That includes you, Torres." Torres's jaw tightened. "Understood." Hale looked at Eva. "You received a phone call at the intake desk, not a question." "Yes," Eva said. "Who was it?" Eva held his gaze. "Wrong number." The silence that followed was brief and total, and understood by everyone in the room for exactly what it was. Hale looked at her for 3 full seconds. Then he said, "If anyone contacts you with information related to this unit's operations, you are legally required to report it through proper channels." His voice was even. "That is not a suggestion." "I understand," Eva said. "Do you?" Hale said. "Completely," Eva said. Another beat. Hale looked at Axel. The dog had shifted slightly in sleep, nose tilting upward as if catching something. "His condition?" "Improving," Eva said. "He needs rest and monitoring through the night." "I'm posting one of the team outside this door," Hale said. "No one enters without my authorization, except medical personnel currently assigned to this case." He looked at Diane. "That includes you, and it specifically includes people who receive late-night phone calls from unidentified sources." He looked at Eva one more time, then he turned and walked out. The door closed. Nobody spoke for a full 4 seconds. Then Priya very quietly said, "He knows." "He suspects," Eva corrected. "There's a difference. If he knew, we'd already be having a different conversation." She turned to Torres. "The briefing, the expanded distribution list, I need the names on it." "I can't access that from here." "Can you access it from anywhere in this building?" Torres thought. "There's a secure terminal in the administrative wing. It's accessible to credentialed military personnel. I have current credentials." "Go," Eva said. "Don't run, don't look urgent, just go." Torres moved toward the door. "Torres," Eva said. He stopped. "The blood on your sleeve." He looked down at it. Danny Rourke's blood, dried to rust on the fabric of his tactical gear. He'd stopped noticing it the way you stop noticing the weight of something you've been carrying long enough. "That goes with you," Eva said. Not the blood. She meant the memory. She meant the grief. She meant the specific and personal knowledge of what happened in that field. "Don't put it down yet. I need you sharp." Torres looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded. A short soldier's nod, the kind that means understood and more. And he went out the door. Diane waited until his footsteps faded. Then she turned to Eva and said, "You lied to Hale." "Yes, you're protecting a source inside a classified military operation on your first shift as a civilian nurse." "When you put it that way," Eva said, "it sounds like a lot." "Eva," Diane's voice was serious in the way it got serious, without theater, without softening. "I have 18 years in this hospital. I have a pension and a mortgage and a daughter in college. I am standing in this room right now because I chose to stay. And I need to know, actually need to know what I'm standing in the middle of. Eva looked at her. Someone murdered a Navy SEAL and framed it as a combat casualty. The only living witness is asleep on that gurney, and the person who did it has enough access to classified operations to have done it cleanly. She paused. That's what you're standing in the middle of. Diane absorbed this. She nodded once, slowly. All right, she said. What do you need from me? I need you to keep doing exactly what you're doing. You're the charge nurse. You control who comes in and out of this bay for medical reasons. If anyone comes in who isn't medical personnel or Torres or Hale, you find a reason to slow them down. I need time. How much time? 12 hours, Eva said. Maybe less. Diane picked up the monitoring chart. She clicked her pen. She wrote something in the chart with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had decided on a course of action and was done deliberating. Axel's next reassessment is scheduled for 0600, she said professionally. I'll make sure the bay is staffed continuously until then. She looked up. Is that sufficient medical cover for whatever it is you're actually doing? Perfect, Eva said. Diane left with her chart and her certainty and her 18 years of knowing exactly which battles were worth fighting. Eva sat back down beside Axel. She put her hand on his side again. His breathing was slow and real and present, and she focused on it the way you focus on something true when everything around it is unstable. She thought about Danny, not about the fact of his death. She was keeping that in a box for now, a necessary and temporary cruelty she was doing to herself because the box was what was keeping her functional. She thought about his voice, the specific quality of it when he was working, when he was in the field, when he was afraid but wasn't going to show it. She thought about the way he talked to Axel, the same low cadence she used, but with his particular rhythm, his particular warmth. She thought about the 20 minutes of his last hour that he spent filing paperwork to make sure his dog got home. The monitor shifted. Axel's heart rate ticked up to 72, then back to 69. A small fluctuation, normal. Then Axel opened his eyes. Not dramatically, not the movie version of waking up, the sudden lurch and gasp. Just the slow, animal return to consciousness, the gradual lifting of eyelids, the small adjustments of a body orienting itself to a new location. His nose worked first, then his eyes found the ceiling. Then, moving with the patient thoroughness of instinct, they found Eva. She didn't move. She let him look. His tail moved once, a single, slow sweep against the gurney surface. Not wagging, not the full-body enthusiasm of a dog greeting a friend in ordinary circumstances. Something quieter and more fundamental than that. The acknowledgement of a living creature recognizing another living creature and deciding that the world, for this moment, was not entirely hostile. Hey, Eva said softly. Hey, Axel, stay still. He made a sound, low and short, almost questioning. I know, she said, I know. She spoke to him in the code again. Those particular sounds, that frequency, and his eyes stayed on her, steady and dark and full of the specific comprehension of an animal whose entire training had been built around trust. He understood her, not her words, her intention, the particular quality of meaning that sits underneath language and is older than language. His head lowered back to the gurney. He exhaled, long and full and complete. Eva kept her hand on his side. She was still sitting like that when her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. Not the same unknown as the intake desk call. Different, she answered. Reyes. Is this the nurse? A man's voice. Older, tight with something. Who is this? My name is Warren, the voice said. Colonel James Warren, retired. I was Danny Rourke's commanding officer before Hale. A pause. I know that means nothing to you right now, but I need you to understand something before Hale gets back in that room. Eva's hand didn't move from Axel's side. I'm listening. The expanded distribution list on the briefing update, Warren said. The one that went out 3 days before the deployment. Eva went completely still. I know about the list, Warren said, because I'm the one who authorized it, and I have been sitting on that fact for 6 hours because I didn't understand the implication until 40 minutes ago when someone sent me the preliminary field report. His voice cracked slightly, just slightly, the crack of a man in his 60s who has been in command for 30 years and is confronting something he cannot command his way out of. I authorized that list because I was asked to by someone I trusted, someone I have trusted for years. Eva looked at the door of the trauma bay, closed. The security officer Hale had posted, she could see his outline through the narrow window in the door. Present, stationary. Who asked you? Eva said. Warren's voice dropped to barely above a murmur. Richard Hale. The monitor beeped. Axel breathed. The ventilation hummed. Eva's eyes stayed on the door. Colonel Warren, she said very carefully, where are you right now? I'm in the parking structure across from your hospital, he said. I've been here for 2 hours. I couldn't. I needed to be close. I needed to know if the dog made it. His voice wavered. Danny was my man. He was mine before he was Hale's. And if I put him in the ground because I signed a piece of paper without asking enough questions, Colonel, Eva's voice was firm and quiet and cut through the waver. I need you to stay exactly where you are. Do not come into this building. Do not contact Hale. Do not contact anyone else. She paused. In approximately 40 minutes, a man named Torres is going to come back to this room. I'm going to send him to you. Tell him everything you told me. You trust Torres? Eva looked at Axel. At the single sweep of his tail, just a few minutes ago, when he recognized her. At the faith of a dog that makes no room for doubt once it has chosen its person. Yes, she said, I trust Torres. She ended the call. She set the phone on the counter. She sat in the quiet room with the dog who was evidence of a murder and the ghost of a man who had loved him. And she thought about the fact that Commander Richard Hale, who had denied Danny Rourke's final request, who had posted a guard on this door, who had looked her in the eye and asked about the phone call, was potentially the reason Danny Rourke was dead. And he was somewhere in this building, and he would be back. Torres came back 19 minutes later. Eva heard his footsteps in the hallway before the door opened. She had been listening for them, cataloging every sound outside that door with the particular attention of someone who has relearned, in the space of a single night, that they never actually stopped being the person they tried to become someone else from. He came in with his jaw set and a folded piece of paper in his hand, and he looked at Eva and then at Axel, who was awake now and tracking the movement with quiet, alert eyes. I got the names, Torres said. He held out the paper. Eva took it. She unfolded it and read it, and the list was 14 names long, and 12 of them meant nothing to her. And one of them she recognized as a logistics coordinator she had briefly encountered during her time with the unit, and the 14th name made her stop reading. She looked up at Torres. Hale's personal aide is on this list. Lieutenant Carver, Torres said. Yes. Why is a commander's personal aide on an operational distribution list for a classified forward position? Torres looked at her steadily. That is exactly the question I asked myself standing in front of that terminal. He paused. Carver has been Hale's aide for 8 months. He has access to everything that crosses Hale's desk. Everything. Eva set the paper down on the counter. She thought for a moment, not long, because she didn't have long, and then she said, There's something else. Torres waited. I got another call, she said, after you left. She told him about Warren, quickly without embellishment, the way you relay intelligence in a field situation. Facts first, interpretation after. She watched his face move through it in real time. Confusion, then recognition, then the specific dawning of a person whose understanding of a situation has just shifted 90 degrees. Warren authorized the list, Torres said slowly, because Hale asked him to. That's what he says. And you believe him. I believe he's sitting in the parking structure across the street, having what appears to be a genuine crisis of conscience, Eva said. Whether that crisis is honest or strategic, I don't know yet, but I need you to go to him. Torres looked at the door. Through the narrow window, the outline of the security officer was still there, still stationary. Hale posted that guard, he said. I know. If I walk out and don't come back, Hale is going to notice. You're going to come back, Eva said. You're going to go to the parking structure. You're going to talk to Warren. You're going to get everything he has, and you're going to be back in this room in 30 minutes. You're a member of this unit. You have operational freedom of movement in this facility. The guard is watching this room, not the hallway. Torres looked at her for a moment with an expression that was measuring something. Not doubting her, something more specific than doubt. You've done this before, he said. Done what? Run an operation from a room. He gestured at the trauma bay. This, what you're doing right now. Managing sources, isolating information, deciding who knows what and when. He paused. This isn't nursing. It's crisis management, Eva said, which is also nursing. He almost smiled. It didn't reach his eyes, but the architecture of it was there for a moment. Then it was gone, and he was a soldier again. 30 minutes, he said. He went to the door, opened it, and Eva heard him exchange a few words with the security officer. Easy, unhurried, the natural rhythm of a man who has nothing to explain. And then his footsteps went down the hall. Eva turned back to Axel. The dog was watching her. He had been watching her since he woke up, with the unbroken focus of an animal that had decided, at some cellular level, that she was the fixed point around which everything else in this room revolved. It was the look of a trained working dog who had found his handler, or the closest available substitute. I know, Eva told him quietly. I know what you're thinking. She didn't speak the code this time. She spoke plain English in the same low register, and Axel listened to the sound of it the way he always listened. Not to the words, but to the intention beneath them, the frequency of her. He filed the paperwork, she said. He made sure you'd get to me. That's the most Danny thing he ever did. Paper form, standard Navy letterhead, submitted through proper channels, in the middle of an active enemy overrun. She paused. He was so stubborn. Axel made the small sound again, the one that wasn't a growl. Yeah, Eva said. I know. She put her hand on his head. He leaned into it. The simple, absolute trust of that gesture. An 80-pound working dog pressing his skull against a human palm in the fluorescent quiet of a trauma bay at 12:30 in the morning was something Eva was going to have to address later, in private, when she had the space for it. Not now. Now she had work. She picked up her phone. She called the number that had identified itself as Echo 4. It rang 4 times. 5, 6, then, Reyes. The voice was more strained than before. The static was worse. Warren called me, she said immediately. He says Hale authorized the expanded distribution list. Silence on the line. 3 full seconds of it. Echo 4, Eva said. Are you there? I'm here, the voice said. I heard you. You already knew, she said. You already knew about Hale. A long exhale on the other end. I suspected. The logs I pulled, one of the access timestamps traces back to a terminal that's assigned to Hale's office. But it's not conclusive. Someone with physical access to his office could have used that terminal without his knowledge. His aide, Eva said. Carver. He's on the distribution list. Another silence. This one felt different, more internal. Carver, Echo 4 said slowly. You know him. I know of him. He came into the unit 8 months ago. The voice paused. 8 months ago is when the leak problem started. There were 2 prior operations that went sideways. We attributed it to other factors, poor intelligence, terrain complications. But if Carver has been in Hale's office for 8 months with access to operational data, Then Rourke wasn't the first, Eva said. No, Echo 4 said. He may not have been the first. The weight of that settled in the room like something physical. I'm going to need those logs, Eva said. Physical copies, time-stamped and authenticated. Everything you pulled from the field. I'm working on getting them out. The situation on my end is, the static surged. Complicated. I need more time. How much time? 6 hours, maybe 8. I told you I have 12, Eva said, so 6 works. Eva, the voice dropped further. If Carver is the source and Hale is knowingly or unknowingly shielding him, or if Hale is directly involved, then going to Naval Command through standard channels means going through Hale's chain. You understand what that means? It means we go around, Eva said. It means we go significantly around. We're talking about bypassing a sitting Naval Special Warfare commander to report intelligence suggesting he may be complicit in the targeted killing of one of his own operators. That is not a small move. Danny Rourke is dead, Eva said, flatly, cleanly. That is also not a small thing. Silence. 6 hours, Eva said. Get me the logs. She ended the call. She set the phone down and stood absolutely still for a moment. And the thing she had been keeping in the box, the thing with Danny's name on it, pushed against the lid, and she let it push. And she held the lid, and after about 4 seconds she exhaled, and it stayed inside, and she was still standing. Axel watched her do all of this without moving. Okay, she said, to him, to herself, to the room. Okay. The door opened. Diane came in with a chart and a professional expression that contained, underneath it, a woman who had clearly been listening to more than she was meant to. She checked Axel's monitors, made notes, and then said without looking up, his pressure is 94/61. Better. Temperature is normal. The wound shows no signs of secondary bleeding. Good, Eva said. Also, Diane said, still not looking up from the chart, Commander Hale is in the consultation room at the end of the hall. He's been in there for the last 20 minutes with 2 people I don't recognize. Civilian clothes, not military bearing, which is interesting. Eva looked at her. You went past the consultation room. I went to check on a patient in room 9, Diane said, which happens to require walking past the consultation room. The door was slightly open. I am a nurse. I notice things. What kind of civilians? Eva said. The kind that don't make eye contact and keep their hands visible, Diane said. The kind that federal law enforcement sends to hospitals when they want to establish a presence without announcing it. Eva felt something shift in her assessment of the situation. Federal. That is my read, Diane said, based on 37 years of being alive and 18 of them in emergency medicine. She finally looked up from the chart. Someone is building something, Eva, and they are building it fast, and they are building it close to this room. 30 seconds of quiet. Axel's monitor beeped twice in the pause, steady and indifferent. All right, Eva said. Hale brought in federal contacts, which means he's either trying to get ahead of something or he's trying to contain something, she thought. Or both. Which is it? Diane said. I don't know yet. How long until you know? 30 minutes, Eva said. Torres is coming back with Warren's information. Once I have that, I'll know whether Hale is a man trying to catch a leak or a man trying to plug one. Diane nodded and returned to her chart. I'll be in the hall. She left and Eva had been alone with Axel for maybe 4 minutes when the door opened again and it wasn't Torres. It was Hale. He came in alone this time. No aide, no personnel, and he closed the door behind him and stood with his back against it and looked at Eva with an expression that was the most unguarded she had seen on him all night. Not soft. Nothing about Richard Hale was soft. But the particular layer of command performance that he had been wearing since he walked into this bay the first time was thinner now. Something underneath it was showing. How is he? Hale said. Better, Eva said carefully. His pressure is up. The wound is stable. Hale nodded. He looked at Axel. The dog looked back at him with the calm, measuring attention that Axel gave to everyone who wasn't Eva or Danny. Not hostile, not welcoming, just assessing. "He doesn't know you well," Eva said. "No," Hale said. "I met him twice." Rourke didn't encourage the dog to bond with command staff. A beat. Said it complicated the working relationship. Something about the way he said Rourke's name was different from before. Less clipped, more personal. Eva filed that. "Commander," she said, "the people in the consultation room." Hale looked at her. The thin layer got a little thinner. "I'm aware that your charge nurse has excellent peripheral vision," he said. "She's observant," Eva agreed. "Who are they?" Hale was quiet for a moment, then, "NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. I requested them 4 hours ago, before I came to this hospital." He paused. "Because the preliminary field report wasn't just a tactical assessment. It contained a flag. An internal flag indicating suspected intelligence compromise." Eva held very still. "You flagged it yourself?" "Yes." "You think there's a leak?" "I know there's a leak," Hale said. "I've known for 6 weeks. I've been trying to identify the source without alerting them." Rourke's operation wasn't the first. It was the third. The first 2 we covered as operational failures because I needed the source to feel safe and keep transmitting. He stopped. His jaw was tight. I made a calculation that identified the pattern more important than the immediate risk, and Rourke paid for that calculation tonight. The room was very quiet. Eva's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. "You've been running a counterintelligence operation inside your own unit. Unofficially, below the radar of anyone who might be connected to the source." He looked at Axel again. "The expanded distribution list was a trace. I expanded it deliberately with a unique operational detail embedded in each copy. The detail that reached the enemy, I was going to be able to trace it back to the specific recipient." He stopped. "I asked Warren to authorize it so the paperwork wouldn't route through my office, so the source wouldn't see my fingerprints on it." Eva let out a breath, long and slow. "Carver," she said. Hale's eyes came to her fast, sharply. "What do you know about Carver?" "The distribution list," Eva said. "His name is on it, and he's been in your office for 8 months, which lines up with—" "How do you have the distribution list?" Hale said. "Torres accessed the secure terminal on your instruction." "Yes." Hale looked at her. The assessment was happening again. That rapid, thorough cataloging. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't the look of a man evaluating a variable he didn't ask for. It was the look of a man realizing that a variable he didn't ask for has been running parallel to him all night and arriving at the same conclusions. "Carver is in this building," Hale said. Eva stood very straight. "What?" "He came in 40 minutes ago. He told the duty officer he was here to coordinate the unit's administrative response to the casualty notification. Standard procedure." Hale's voice was even, but his eyes were not. "I wasn't informed until 10 minutes ago." "He's in the building," Eva said, "and Axel is—" "The only living witness who was physically present at the position," Hale said. "Yes, I'm aware." He moved away from the door. "That is why NCIS is here. I needed to move fast enough to intercept Carver before he—" The security officer's outline in the door window disappeared. Eva saw it first. She was looking at the door, and the outline that had been there since Hale posted it 3 hours ago was simply gone. There and then not there, as cleanly as a light switching off. "Your guard," Eva said. Hale turned. He looked at the window. He had his phone out in under 2 seconds, thumb moving fast. He listened. His face changed. "He's not picking up." Eva moved to Axel. Her hands went to the edges of the gurney, and she positioned herself between the dog and the door. Not consciously, not performed, the body memory of someone trained to cover a principal doing exactly what it was built to do. Axel came fully alert. His head lifted. His nose worked. His ears went forward. He had caught something. Not heard it, caught it. The way working dogs catch things that haven't arrived yet for human senses. "Someone's coming," Eva said. Hale had his back against the wall beside the door. His hand was inside his jacket. His eyes were on Eva. "Get the dog down," he said quietly. "Get him flat." "He won't." "Get him flat," Hale said. Eva turned to Axel. She put both hands on his shoulders and pressed, gently but with weight, and she spoke the code, those sounds, that frequency, low and urgent, and Axel resisted for exactly 1 second. The resistance of an animal that doesn't want to go down when everything in the room is saying threat. And then he went down, flat on the gurney, pressing himself against the surface. The door handle moved. It moved slowly. Not the push of someone entering normally, the deliberate, careful movement of someone who has thought about what they're doing. Hale pressed himself harder against the wall beside the door. The door opened. The man who came in was young, mid-20s, Eva clocked, in a duty uniform with a lieutenant's insignia and a face that would have been unremarkable in any other context. He was holding a tablet, standard issue, the kind of thing an aide carried. His eyes went to Axel immediately, and in the half-second before he registered that he was not alone in the room, Eva saw his face do something that no innocent person's face does when they look at a wounded dog. He looked relieved. Relieved that the dog was still down, that the dog was still contained, that the dog had not yet done whatever a dog might do that this man was afraid of. Then he saw Eva. Then he turned and saw Hale. The tablet dropped. "Lieutenant Carver," Hale said. His voice was absolutely steady. "I'm going to need you to keep your hands where I can see them." Carver's hands came up. He was breathing fast. His eyes went to the door, the calculation of it visible in real time, the measuring of distance impossibility. And then they went to Axel, who was on the gurney with his head up and his eyes locked on Carver with the fixed, unwavering attention of an animal that has found the scent it has been carrying for hours. The sound Axel made was not a growl. It was the sound of a dog that has identified something exactly. "He knows you," Eva said, quietly, to Carver. Carver looked at her. He was trying to maintain something, composure, a story, an alternative explanation, and it was coming apart in front of everyone in the room. "I'm here on administrative. The casualty notification requires—" "The guard outside this door," Hale said. "Where is he?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Carver said. "Sergeant Mills was posted at this door as of 2200 hours, Hale said. "He is not there now. His phone goes unanswered. I'm going to ask you once more where he is." Carver's hands were still up, but they were shaking, small tremors. Eva tracked them. His weight was on his right foot, a lean toward the door that his conscious mind hadn't authorized yet, but his body was already working on. "Don't," Eva said. He looked at her. "You're 23, 24 years old," she said. "Whatever they told you this was, whatever they paid you or promised you or threatened you with, you came into this hospital tonight to make sure a dog couldn't testify against you." She paused. "You know what that dog's handler was. You know what Danny Rourke was. And you're 24 years old and you sold his location for whatever they offered you." She let that sit for exactly 2 seconds. "Don't run. There is nowhere in this building that is better for you than this room right now." Carver's face was doing something irreversible. The composure was completely gone, and what was underneath it was young and terrified and something else. Something that in another context you might have called guilt, the raw and ugly kind that hasn't been processed into self-justification yet. "I didn't know he'd die," Carver said. His voice broke on it. The room absorbed that. Hale stepped forward. "Lieutenant Carver, you are under detention pending NCIS investigation." His voice was fully command now. No giving it, no room. "Do not speak again without counsel present." The door opened and 2 people came in. The civilians Diane had spotted, the ones with visible hands in federal bearing. and they moved to Carver with the practiced efficiency of people who have done this before. And Carver let them, because he was 24 years old, and the thing he had been carrying since a field position in a location he couldn't name had been overrun, was finally, in the worst possible way, done being carried by him alone. As they took him out, he looked back at Axel. Axel watched him go. His tail did not move. His ears stayed forward. His eyes tracked Carver to the door, and then past it until the footsteps faded down the hall. And then, with the deliberate and total finality of an animal that has completed a task, he put his head back down on the gurney. The room was quiet. Torres appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath, with a look on his face that said he had been running and had arrived 30 seconds too late for the main event. He looked at the empty space where Carver had been. He looked at Hale. He looked at Eva. "I missed it," he said. "Warren?" Eva said. "He's outside. Torres looked at Hale. Something passed between them. The complex and uncomfortable look of a soldier confronting the possibility that he misjudged someone he trusted and finding it was more complicated than betrayal. "Warren authorized the distribution list," Torres said to Hale, carefully, "because you asked him to." "Yes," Hale said. "He didn't know why." "No, I needed his authorization without his knowledge of the operation. I couldn't risk the information moving further than it had to." Hale paused. "Warren is a good man. He's been sitting in a parking structure for 2 hours, believing he may have gotten Rourke killed. That is not a thing he deserves to sit with." Torres exhaled. "I'll go get him." Hale nodded. Torres left. Hale turned to Eva. He looked at her the way he had looked at her when he first came into this room, back in those first minutes when the dog was still bleeding and the room was still in crisis, but with something fundamentally different in it now. The evaluation was over. He had reached a conclusion. "The phone call earlier," he said, "the wrong number." Eva held his gaze. "Echo 4, she said. Hale closed his eyes for a half second. "I know who Echo 4 is." "I thought you might." "He's been trying to get those logs out since the position went down," Hale said. "I've been trying to find a way to receive them that Carver couldn't intercept. Every channel I tried went through Carver's access point." He paused. "Echo 4 called you because Rourke told him to. And Rourke told him to because Danny knew that whatever channel I was on," Eva said, "it wasn't one that went through this unit's network." She paused. "I've been out for 14 months. I have no active credentials, no active access, no footprint in the system." She paused again. "He used me as a blind channel, on purpose." Hale was quiet. "He planned this," Eva said. The realization was arriving fully now, piece by piece, the way things arrive when you've been too close to them all night to see the whole shape. Not the dying. I don't think he planned the dying, but he planned for the possibility of it, the paperwork, Echo 4's instructions, the Delta 7 signal to draw me in. She stopped. He built a contingency that ran entirely outside the compromised network, using me. "Using you," Hale said, "because you were the one person he was certain was clean. And because," Eva said quietly, "he knew that if I heard the Delta 7 signal, I would not stay at my nursing station." The monitor beeped. Axel breathed. The night continued its slow move toward morning. "He knew me," Eva said. It was the simplest thing she had said all night, and it cost more than any of the complicated things. Hale watched her for a moment. The command expression was still there, but underneath it, just slightly, was the look of a man who understood the particular weight of that sentence and did not try to make it lighter. "He trusted you," Hale said, "completely and without reservation, and he was right to." Eva looked at Axel. The dog's eyes were closed again. His breathing was slow and full, the deep and genuine sleep of an animal that has finally, after hours of grief and fight and terror, found safe ground. "I need to call Echo 4, Eva said. "He needs to know Carver is in custody and the logs can come through now." Use my secure line, Hale said. He held out his phone. It's clean. I verified it an hour ago. Eva took the phone. She looked at it for a moment, then she looked at Hale. When Carver said he didn't know Rourke would die, yes, Hale said, he knew where this was going. Do you believe him? Hale's face did something that was not exactly pain and not exactly anger, but lived in the territory between them. I believe he told himself that, he said carefully. Whether it was true depends on what he was told by whoever handled him. We'll know more in the next 12 hours. And the people who handled him, Eva said, they're not in this building. No, NCIS will move on that information as soon as Echo 4's logs are authenticated. He paused. It goes significantly higher than one lieutenant's aide, Eva. The operation that Rourke was targeted in, the intelligence that was sold, the buyer had to be state level. This is not going to be a small investigation. Eva processed that, the shape of it, the size of it. Danny walked into something much bigger than a forward position, she said. Yes. She looked at the phone in her hand, then she pressed call. Echo 4 answered on the first ring. Reyes. It's done, she said. Carver is in custody. The channel is clean. Get those logs to Commander Hale's secure line. Now. A pause. Then a sound on the line that might, in different circumstances, have been relief. Understood. Another pause. Is the dog alive? Eva looked at Axel. His paw was extended over the edge of the gurney, toward her, the way sleeping dogs reach toward the people they trust. Yes, she said. Axel is alive. Good, the voice said. Danny would want to know that. Eva ended the call. She set Hale's phone on the counter. She sat back down in the chair beside Axel's gurney. She put her hand on his side, over his ribs, over the steady beating of a heart that had come very close to stopping tonight and had not. Torres came back in with Warren behind him, an older man, broad-shouldered, with the look of someone who had been sitting alone with a terrible thought for 2 hours and was only now beginning to breathe properly. He stopped when he saw Hale, and Hale looked at him for a long moment with an expression that was not without accountability. James, Hale said. Richard, Warren said. His voice was rough. Tell me it wasn't my fault. Hale was quiet for a moment. It wasn't your fault, he said. It was mine. I used you as cover for an operation without telling you what you were covering. That's on me. Warren looked at Axel, at the sleeping dog, at the paw over the edge of the gurney. He pressed his fist against his mouth the way Diane had done earlier, the gesture of someone compressing something that needs compressing, and he nodded once. Then he looked at Eva. You're Reyes, he said. Yes, she said. Danny talked about you, Warren said. More than once. He paused. He said you were the best field medic he'd ever worked with. He said when things went wrong, you were the person he wanted in the room. He paused again. I think tonight proved him right. Eva looked at Axel, at the slow rise and fall of his chest, at the evidence of Danny Rourke's last act of faith, the paperwork filed, the signal sent, the contingency built around the one person he trusted to follow it through. He did the work, Eva said. I just answered the call. Outside down the hall, the hospital continued its business. The night shift changed over somewhere in the distance. A door opened and closed. Life going on in its relentless, indifferent way. And in Trauma Bay 4, the dog breathed, and the people who had gathered around his survival sat with what the night had cost them and what it had given them. And nobody spoke for a while, because some things need the space of silence before they can be properly held. The silence didn't last as long as it deserved to. It lasted maybe 4 minutes. 4 minutes of Axel breathing and Warren staring at the floor, and Torres standing near the door with his arms crossed and his eyes doing the work of a man processing a night that had rearranged everything he thought he knew about the unit he had given 6 years of his life to. 4 minutes of Eva sitting beside the gurney with her hand on the dog's side in the particular stillness of someone who has been running on adrenaline and competence and controlled grief for 4 hours, and can feel all three of them beginning, very slightly, to thin. Then Hale's phone rang. He answered it in the hall. Through the door, Eva could hear his voice. Not the words, just the cadence, which shifted within the first 10 seconds from controlled to something more urgent. She tracked it without moving. Beside her, Axel's ear swiveled toward the door. His nose worked. He was reading the room the same way she was, from the same information, arriving at the same conclusion. Something had changed. Hale came back in. His face was a controlled thing, but his eyes were carrying more than they had been carrying when he left. Echo 4 is out, he said. Torres stood straight. Out as in, out of the field. He reached a secondary extraction point 40 minutes ago. He's en route to a secure debriefing location with the logs. Hale looked at Eva. All of them. Authenticated, time-stamped, complete chain of custody. The NCIS team has confirmed receipt. He paused. It's enough. It's more than enough. Eva exhaled. The kind of exhale that carries weight on the way out. Who is Echo 4? Torres said. He had been patient with not knowing this for several hours, and the patience was clearly at its limit. Hale looked at Eva. It was her call. That look said so clearly. His name is Reed, Eva said. Specialist Calvin Reed. He was embedded with the unit as an intelligence analyst on the last 3 deployments. Off the official roster, he and Danny worked together closely. She paused. He's the one Danny told to call me if things went wrong. Reed, Torres said. He was thinking. I knew a Reed. Never knew his first name. Quiet guy. Always near communications. That's him, Eva said. Torres absorbed this. He was there tonight. He was at the position when Danny... Yes. And he got out. He got out with the evidence that tells us why Danny didn't. Eva's voice was even. That's what Danny needed him to do. That was the plan. Torres looked at the ceiling for a moment, looked back down. Danny built an exit strategy for his own death. Danny built an exit strategy for justice, Eva said. There's a difference. The room sat with that. Hale moved to the monitor. He looked at Axel's readings with the attention of a man who is not a medical professional, but who has spent enough time around field assessments to read basic data. His pressure, he said, 97/64, Eva said. It's been climbing steadily for the last hour. He's going to be fine. Hale nodded. He looked at the dog with an expression that was, for the first time all night, not about strategy or command or information management. It was personal. The look of a man confronting the cost of the calculations he'd made. I should have approved Rourke's request, he said, 14 months ago, when he asked for you as the unit medic. Eva said nothing. I made a procedural decision, Hale said. You had separated. The request was irregular. I followed protocol. He paused. If I had approved it, you would have been on that deployment. And I might be dead too, Eva said. She said it without sharpness, just as a fact. Or you might not be, Hale said. Or things might have gone differently in ways I can't calculate. The point is, he stopped. The point is I denied a man something he asked for, and I told myself it was professionalism. And tonight you did in 47 minutes what no one else in this building could do at all. He looked at her directly. That's not a small thing to sit with. Eva looked at him for a moment. Then she said, you ran a solo counterintelligence operation inside your own compromised unit for 6 weeks. You identified a leak that was 3 operations deep. You brought in NCIS before anyone knew the net was closing. She paused. That's also not a small thing. Warren from the corner made a sound that might have been the beginning of a rueful laugh. I've known this man for 20 years, he said to no one in particular. I have never once heard him accept a partial absolution gracefully. I'm not offering absolution, Eva said. I'm offering accuracy. Hale looked at her for a moment. Then something shifted in his face. Just briefly, that was the closest thing to genuine she had seen from him all night. Rourke said you were difficult, he said. Rourke said I was thorough, Eva said. He used that word specifically because he knew I'd find out what he said. Torres made a sound, an actual sound, involuntary, something between a laugh and something that hurt too much to be a laugh. He pressed his fist against his mouth and turned toward the wall for a moment, and the room gave him that moment without comment. Then Priya pushed the door open, and she had a look on her face that said she had been waiting in the hall with information, and the information was ready to be delivered. Dr. Webb is asking about the patient, she said, carefully neutral. Everyone in the room registered the specific comedy and specific discomfort of that sentence simultaneously. The patient, Eva said. He's the attending on record, Priya said. He's been in his office for the last 2 hours, which I think is his version of giving you space, and now it's 0140 and he wants an update. Eva looked at Axel, at the stable monitors, at the dog who had, as of 2 hours ago, been 6 minutes from being sedated and 10 from being given up on, and who was now breathing slow and clean and certain. Tell him the patient is stable, Eva said. Pressure normalizing, wounds secured, no signs of secondary complications. He can review the chart at 0600, she paused, and tell him thank you. Priya blinked. Thank you? For stepping back, Eva said. It cost him something to do that. Tell him I know it did. Priya looked at her for a moment with an expression that had clearly revised its first impression of Eva Reyes several times tonight and was doing so again. Then she nodded and left. Hale picked up his secure phone. I need to make calls, he said. The NCIS team is going to need direction on Carver's interview, and I want Reed's debriefing routed through a channel that doesn't touch anything Carver had access to. He moved to the door. I'll be back within the hour. He stopped, turned. Reyes, he said. Commander, don't go anywhere. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even quite an order. It was something closer to a request from a man who had spent the night discovering that the variable he hadn't planned for was the most important one in the room. Eva understood what he meant, and she nodded, and he left. Warren stood up from his chair. He was a big man, and he moved with the deliberateness of someone whose body had stored a long career in it. He came to the gurney and stood beside Eva and looked at Axel for a long moment. When Danny first came into my unit, Warren said, he was 26 years old and the most stubborn human being I had ever encountered in 30 years of service. Which is saying something. He paused. He argued with me about 6 different protocols in his first month. He was right about 4 of them. Eva smiled. It was small and private and completely real. Sounds right. He never did anything without a reason, Warren said, and the reason was always the mission, the people, never himself. He looked at Eva. The paperwork he filed tonight, the call to Reed, the signal, he built all of that while he was still alive. He built it because he knew that even if he didn't make it, the work had to. Yes, Eva said. That's the kind of man he was, Warren said. I know, Eva said. I knew him. Warren put his hand on her shoulder, briefly, the gesture of an older man who has run out of words and knows that touch is sometimes more honest anyway. Then he straightened and looked at Torres. Walk me out, he said. I need air, and I need to call my wife, and I need approximately 30 minutes of not being inside a building. Torres looked at Eva. You good? Go, she said. I'm good. They left. The door swung shut, and Eva was alone with Axel for the first time all night. She sat back in the chair. She looked at him. He was watching her with half-open eyes, the drowsy, content attention of a dog that is healing and knows it, and is choosing, moment by moment, to stay present rather than sleep all the way down. Hey, she said softly. His tail moved. 2 slow sweeps. We made it, she said. You made it. She reached out and put both hands on his face, gently, the way you hold something that is precious and has been close to being lost. And she looked at him and he looked at her, and somewhere in the specific and unrepeatable frequency of that exchange, The things she had been keeping in the box since 11 o'clock at night became, finally and necessarily, too large for the box. She didn't break down. That's not what happened. Eva Reyes was not a person who broke down. Not because she was too strong for it, but because she had learned, in hard places and hard years, to grieve the way you do field work, with attention, with purpose, with both hands present. She cried quietly, the way a person cries when they are crying for a specific person, and the crying is an act of respect rather than a loss of control. For the man who had sat in the dark with her and trusted her and been trusted back. For the 20 minutes of his last hour that he spent making sure his dog got home. For the version of her life that she had walked away from, and the version that had walked into a trauma bay tonight and refused to stay, walked away from. Axel pushed his nose against her wrist. She laughed, small and wet and real. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I hear you." She sat with him for a while after that. Just sat. Just breathed. Just let the night settle into something she could carry forward. At 02:15, the door opened, and it was Diane, carrying 2 cups of coffee, which Eva was beginning to understand was Diane's primary love language in crisis situations. She set 1 cup down without comment. She sat in the other chair. She looked at Eva's face and made no remark about it. "Carver is being processed," Diane said after a moment. "I heard it from one of the NCIS agents in the hall. He's talking." She paused. "Apparently he started talking before they even got him to the interview room." "Guilt is exhausting to carry," Eva said. "He said he was approached 8 months ago," Diane continued. "Overseas contact. They told him it was just intelligence gathering, location data, timing windows. They told him nobody would get hurt." She paused. "He said he believed that until the first operation went sideways. And then he told himself it wasn't his fault. And then the second one. And then Danny," Eva said. "And then Rourke," Diane said. "And by then he was in so deep that the only move he saw was making sure there were no witnesses, which is why he came here tonight." Eva looked at Axel. "He looked at Axel and he felt relief," she said. "When he came in, before he saw Hale, he saw the dog still down and he felt relieved." "I know," Diane said. "You told me." "I keep coming back to that," Eva said. "That one moment, that relief." She paused. "He sold Danny's position, and then he came to finish the job. And the thing that stopped him was a dog who woke up and knew his smell." They sat with that for a moment. "That's going to be in a report somewhere," Diane said. "A classified report that nobody will ever read. And that's a shame." Eva almost smiled again. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Unknown number, but she recognized the pattern of digits. The same routing signature as the earlier calls, just a different endpoint. She answered. "Reyes, it's Reed." The voice was clearer now. No static. The voice of a man in a warm room somewhere, instead of a field position. And the difference in sound quality was the difference between one world and another. "I heard Carver is in custody." "Yes," Eva said. "The logs are authenticated?" Hale confirmed it. A long exhale on the line. "Good, that's..." A pause. "That's what Danny needed." "Reed," Eva said. "Are you all right?" Silence. Not the operational kind, the personal kind. "I was with him," Reed said. "At the end, I want you to know that. He wasn't alone." Eva closed her eyes. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was steady and it cost her to make it steady, and she paid that cost without complaint. "He asked about Axel," Reed said, "in the last transmission, before I had to move. He asked if Axel had gotten out, and I told him the transport was away, and he said..." Reed stopped, cleared his throat. "He said good, just good. That was the whole thing." Eva opened her eyes. She looked at Axel, who had his head up and was watching her face with the specific attention he gave to moments when she was feeling something large. "That was the whole thing," she repeated quietly. "Yeah," Reed's voice was rough. He loved that dog. I know, Eva said. I know he did. He loved you too, Reed said. For what it's worth, I know that's... He stopped. I know it's not the right time. I just thought you should hear it plainly. He wasn't a man who said things plainly, and maybe someone should say it plainly. Eva sat with that for a moment, let it land where it needed to land. Then she said, "Thank you for getting out. Thank you for the logs. Thank you for calling me when he told you to." "I'd have called you anyway," Reed said. "He was right about you. He was right about everything, actually, which was incredibly annoying, and I told him so regularly." A pause. "Take care of Axel." "I will," Eva said. The line went quiet. She sat with the phone in her hand for a moment. Then she set it on the counter. Diane was watching her with the particular patience of a woman who understood that some things needed to arrive in their own time and couldn't be hurried. "He loved you too," Diane said. Not a question, not a comment exactly, just a gentle acknowledgement that she had heard. "He was my person," Eva said. "I told you that already." "Yes," Diane said, "but I think maybe he was more than the word you were using for it." Eva looked at Axel, at the dog who was Danny's dog, and who was now, by paperwork and by choice, and by the specific trust of an animal that doesn't give its loyalty to titles, hers. "Yeah," she said, "maybe." They sat quietly for a few more minutes, then footsteps in the hall, the particular cadence of a man who walks like he was trained to, and Hale came back in. His face had changed again. He had made his calls. The operation was moving. The machine of consequence was turning. You could see it in him, the particular release of a man who has been carrying something alone for too long and has finally handed it to enough other people that the weight is distributed. He stood at the foot of the gurney and looked at Eva, and he said the thing she had been waiting, without knowing she was waiting, for him to say. "The provisional designation in Rourke's paperwork," he said. "Axel's emergency handler. I'm moving to make it permanent." Eva held his gaze. "That requires your agreement," Hale said, "and it requires a conversation about what that means for your current position, which is..." "I'm a nurse," Eva said. "You're a field medic who is currently employed as a nurse," Hale said, "and those are not the same thing, as tonight has made abundantly clear." He paused. "The K9 program has a position. It's been open for 7 months. We couldn't fill it adequately." He paused again. "I think you know why. Because nobody else could work with Axel the way Eva could. Because Axel had chosen his people, and his people were Danny and Eva, and Danny was gone, and the math of that was not complicated." Hale didn't say all of that. He didn't need to. "I left for a reason," Eva said. "I know why you left," Hale said. "I read the file. Not the official file, the real one. The one that exists between the lines of the official file." He paused. "You lost someone, before Danny, early in your rotation. A civilian casualty in a field operation that should have been cleaner than it was." Eva's jaw tightened slightly. "You carried the weight of that decision as if it was yours to carry alone," Hale said. "It wasn't. The board cleared you completely. The operational review..." "I know what the review said," Eva said. "I was there." "Then you know that leaving wasn't the right call," he said. "Not for you, and not..." He gestured toward Axel. "Not for him." The room was very quiet. "Coming back isn't simple," Eva said. "No," Hale said. "It isn't. I'm not asking you to decide tonight. I'm asking you to consider it." He paused. "And I'm telling you that if you come back, it's on your terms. Your operational parameters, your protocols for Axel's handling, your call on deployment readiness. Danny's last communication made it clear that your judgment is the right standard. I'm not in a position to argue with him." Another pause. "I wasn't in a position to argue with him when he was alive either, if I'm being honest." Torres came back in then, quietly, having apparently been in the hallway long enough to hear the last portion of the conversation. He came and stood near Axel's gurney, and he said nothing. But he looked at Eva with an expression that was clear and simple, and said without words, "Please come back." Eva looked at Axel. He was fully awake now, watching her with those dark, steady eyes. His tail was moving slowly, not performing anything, just moving, the way a tail moves when a dog is content, and tired, and present. She thought about the first time she had walked away, the airport, the civilian clothes that felt like a costume, the specific and disorienting lightness of a bag that didn't have field gear in it. She had told herself it was growth. She had told herself it was healing. For 14 months she had been telling herself that, and for 14 months the telling had been slightly louder than necessary. She thought about 47 minutes into her first shift, standing at a medication dispensary, hearing the words KIA come through a speaker, and her body knowing, before her mind had finished processing, exactly what to do and exactly where to go. Built is built, Diane had said that, and Diane had been right about most things tonight. She thought about Danny, about the paperwork filed in his last 20 minutes, about a man who had known her well enough to build a contingency around the specific way she was, the version of her that she had been trying to dismantle for 14 months, and that had walked into this trauma bay tonight and done what it was built to do. He had known she would come. He had built the whole thing on the certainty that she would come. And she had. That was the truest thing about the night. That was the thing that would stay. Eva looked at Hale. "I have conditions," she said. Hale's expression shifted by approximately 4 degrees. "Tell me." "Axel stays with me during his recovery, not kenneled, not in a facility, with me. His psychological recovery is as important as his physical recovery, and he needs continuity of handler during the transition period. That's not negotiable." "Agreed," Hale said. "My operational parameters are my own. I set the standards for Axel's deployment readiness, and no timeline overrides that assessment." "Agreed." "Reed comes in from the field," Eva said, "officially, on roster. He did the work tonight that cracked this open, and he deserves to exist on paper." Hale paused. Then, "I'll make the case." "That's not agreed," Eva said. "No," Hale said. "It's the best I can do tonight, but I will make the case, and I will make it fully, and you have my word on that." Eva looked at him steadily. She had spent 4 hours in a room with Richard Hale, watching him operate under significant pressure, and she had formed an opinion of him that was more complicated and more accurate than the one she'd walked in with. He was a man who made hard decisions and lived with the cost of them, and did not pretend the cost wasn't real. She could work with that. "All right," she said. Hale gave a single clean nod. "Welcome back, Reyes." Torres made a sound, the involuntary, genuine sound of relief that a person makes when something they needed to happen has happened, and their body announces it before their professionalism can contain it. He pressed his hand to his mouth, looked at the ceiling, looked back down. "Sorry," he said. "Don't be," Eva said. Diane appeared in the doorway. She had a look on her face that said she had also been in the hallway and had also been listening, and was also not remotely apologetic about it. She looked at Eva with 18 years of emergency medicine and 37 years of being alive in them, and she said, "For what it's worth." "What?" Eva said. "This is the right room for you," Diane said. "Whether it's this one or a field version of this one. You're a person who belongs in the room where the hard thing is happening." She paused. Danny knew that. He built his contingency on it, and he was right. Eva looked at her. Then she looked at Torres. Then she looked at Hale, who had moved to stand near the door with the particular posture of a man preparing to return to the work that was waiting for him in the hall. The work that would occupy the next several days and weeks, and that was larger and more complicated than one night in one hospital. And then she looked at Axel. He had his chin on the edge of the gurney. His eyes were on her face. His tail was moving, slow and steady, and his breathing was deep and even and present. He was a dog who had survived the worst night of his life because someone had spoken his language. Because one person in a building full of people had known what he needed to hear and had knelt down and said it. Because Danny Rourke had built a contingency around the right person. Eva put her hand on Axel's head. He leaned into it, eyes closing, the total and uncomplicated trust of an animal who has found the one constant in a world that took everything else away. She was 31 years old. She had walked away from the hardest thing she'd ever been good at because she thought the walking away was the brave part. And then a dog had refused treatment, and a man had pressed a needle to his neck. And somewhere in the building, Eva Reyes had heard it. And the person she had been trying not to be anymore had stood up and walked toward it, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was. Because some people are built for the room where the hard thing is happening. Because built is built, and trained is trained, and chosen is chosen. And because Danny Rourke, who had known her better than she had known herself for the last 14 months, had made sure that when the moment came, she would be 40 feet away and not a step further. That was what he had done with his last 20 minutes. Not prayed, not mourned, not tried to save himself. He had filed the right paperwork and sent the right signal and trusted the right person. And because he did, his dog was alive. Because he did, Eva was home. She held Axel's head in her hands and she felt his heartbeat, steady, insistent, real. And she thought, I hear you, Danny. I hear you. Some people leave and never find their way back. And some people leave and spend every day walking in a circle that keeps bringing them to the same door. And the door keeps waiting, because that is what the right door does. Eva Reyes had spent 14 months walking that circle. Tonight, she stopped walking and went inside.